One of the things about this program that we try to do is follow up on stories. I was with someone the other day, and she said to me, you know what the media never does? You never follow up. Sometimes you publish a story about an allegation about someone, and if they're proved innocent, you never follow up. You just wreck their lives and move on, and it should be an obligation to follow up. Well, we do try to follow up. Not all the time. We're not perfect, of course. But since 2016, we have been following closely the story of Soli Faqiri. You've probably heard it on this show. Soli Faqiri was a young man with a mental illness. He was arrested and put in the Central East Correctional Center in Lindsay, Ontario in 2016. He was there for 11 days. And then his family was informed that Soli Faqiri was dead. How, they asked. How did our brother die in the hands of the government in only 11 days? Well, we don't know, they said. There was an altercation, they said. The initial coroner's report revealed that Soli Faqiri's body was covered with 50 contusions. 50 bruises. A serious wound on his head. No one was charged. A video eventually emerged showing guards putting a spit hood over Soli Faqiri, who was in solitary, waiting to actually be treated as all mentally ill patients are supposed to be treated. He was not. He was supposed to be transferred to a different facility. They put a spit hood over him. They shackled his arms behind his back. They shackled his feet. Not 2 guards, not 3 guards, 10 guards, maybe up to 20. They were punching him. He was defenseless. Head covered, shackled. They pulled him away from the hall where the video was and into a cell where there is conveniently no video, and he died. I've been covering this story and talking to Yusuf Faqiri, his brother, who's been on a quest for justice for his brother since 2016. There has been a podcast, the TV Ontario, a 6-part podcast on this, on what happened to Soli Faqiri. The CBC, Fifth Estate, did a documentary. The Star has written about it. The Globe has written about it. I've written about it in Maclean's. I've covered it extensively here on this radio show and on TV. But finally, after 5 years, the post-mortem report into Soleiman Faqiri's death will now finally be reviewed and updated. That's right. There is actually finally some light. The chief pathologist of Ontario, Dr. Michael Paulinen, has taken over the case from the previous pathologist. And I'm going to bring on Yusuf Faqiri, Soli's brother, to give us an update. And Yusuf, always good, and I hope you and your family are in these very difficult times are doing okay. Tell us what the new pathologist said.
Thank you very much, Evan, for having me. It's long overdue, sir. It's long overdue, Evan. The chief pathologist has now taken over the case. He's going to review and update the post-mortem report, including the facts that involve Mr. John Thibault that was not involved in the first post-mortem report, the eyewitness, as well as facts involving Don Moselle, the fire jail guard who admitted wrongdoing, and they saying that excessive force. It's long overdue, Evan, that this report to be reviewed and updated. The 2017 report is outdated, Evan. Many people question the ruling of that report being unascertained. But I want to be clear, sir. This is a guarded optimism and a guarded hope, sir, because unfortunately, institutions and the Ontario government and the government itself has not given my family much for hope. It's journalists like yourself and other folks that have given us hope, Evan. But we are approaching this with guarded optimism. Hopefully they can get it right this time, Evan.
Yeah, you try to reconnect. Your line's not great, and I want people to hear you. That's Yusuf Faqiri, Soli's brother. We're going to try to reconnect. This is a really interesting development, as you know. Yusuf Faqiri just mentioned something called unascertained. which is a new TVO podcast that investigates in 6 parts what happened to Soli Faqiri, and a lot of new evidence emerged. And because of that information and because of a lot of reports, finally the Ontario government, which is in charge of the Lindsay prison, and the new chief forensic pathologist of Ontario, Michael Pollinan, is finally going to review the case. And that is really good news because there's a lot of things to review. How does someone go into prison and get beaten and die? Unascertained, the name of the podcast was, we don't know how he died. So what do you hope the chief pathologist does now that we've got you back here, Yusuf?
You need to get it right, Evan. I want justice for my brother, but justice for all other Ontarians suffering from mental illness. They gave the unascertained ruling. Evan, many medical experts question why it was an unascertained ruling. They have to get it right, Evan. We need justice for Soleiman, because justice for Soleiman is justice for all Canadians and Ontarians suffering from mental illness. This is the first time, sir, that there's a government institution that are having a sincere look at all the considered facts into Soleiman Faqiri's death. The OPP said that they could not press charges because they could not tell which guard gave the fatal blow, and they referenced this post-mortem report saying that it was unascertained. So, and that that gave my family such difficult tragedy, Evan. And so that's why we're approaching this situation with guarded optimism, Evan, but because we've continued to be disappointed by institutions, obviously, sir.
I just want our listeners to understand. So Yusuf's talking about his own brother, who he grew up with, who had a mental illness, who was arrested. And when they finally find out, it took months and months. I remember this very vividly. It's so painful for Yusuf to hear this. The first report from the coroner's office said, here, this is the first post-mortem report. This is 2017. There was 50 signs of blunt impact trauma on the body. So they're beating him. His upper and lower extremities, his shoulders, his neck, his head, and his back. And you know what they concluded? We don't know what the cause of death is. We don't know. And Yusuf, that's what they said, it was unascertained. Can you imagine? They looked at all that and they said, well, and no one was charged. No one was charged and no cause of death. It was like he disappeared.
Absolutely, Evan. And that's the crux of it, Evan. That's the crux of it, is that the post-mortem report in 2017 does not resemble Soleiman Faqiri's case anymore. It's an outdated report. It's an outdated report that is factually, that are missing very important facts. The fact that the chief pathologist, sir, has taken over the case from the pathologist effectively is a historic event here, because they are looking at this closely, because many people have questioned that ruling in itself, Evan. And for us, this is one step closer, hopefully, for a step closer to get justice for Soli in our efforts to honor him, Evan.
How long will this take? Because I've read his note. He says, I believe it's important for me to review this case on the basis of my duties. He has considerable practical experience with post-mortem examinations of causes of death during detention. How long could this take, sir?
Evan, we're hoping to get a response very, very soon. We don't know the exact date, but we as a family are following this very closely, and people in Ontario and Canada are following this very closely because, Evan, people were confused with the first report. And the way Soleiman lost his life, Evan, is such a tragic and difficult way. And my family continues to not even have his death acknowledged by the Ontario government. And so we see this report as an opportunity for the first time for government to getting it right for once, Evan.
Yusuf Faqiri, the brother of Soli Faqiri, who died at the Central East Correctional Centre in Lindsay, Ontario in 2016, 5 years ago. Now the chief pathologist of Ontario is finally going to review the case. Cautious optimism, but I stress cautious there. Yusuf, thank you, sir, for the update. You know, we don't let this case go, and the story of your brother remains important to all of us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Evan.
That's Yusuf Faqiri, who, by the way, has done remarkable work. I've never met a stronger person than Yusuf Faqiri.